Yesterday in Philadelphia, bad news for the Phils. Vincent Velasquez, after 2 pitches, has to leave the game. Reevaluated today. Pete Mackinnon said that some bicep discomfort here. Craig Calcaterra from NBC Sports is with us, taking a look at the baseball landscape. Craig, and I guess when you see something like this with a guy like Velasquez, who had Tommy John surgery a couple of years ago, we were talking about this yesterday. Not that the Astros were, that's why they were willing to give up on him, but maybe something to keep an eye on when a guy has to leave a game with about 10 miles an hour off his fastball. A little bit of concern there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, biceps soreness doesn't sound serious, but you have to wonder, is he compensating because of his elbow, right? I mean, that a lot of injuries that end up being serious start out sounding innocuous. And sometimes guys will work around problems and they'll hurt their shoulder because something else doesn't work, or they'll hurt their elbow because something other part doesn't work. And, abundance of caution situation with Velasquez. He had Tommy John surgery in 2010. That was a long time ago, but you never can tell. And since the Phillies aren't probably going to be a huge contender this season, and Velasquez is definitely a huge part of their future, and they gave up a good amount for him, you got to be careful with him. So I would sit him a little bit, make sure that it just was some freak biceps problems, because, that was really concerning, seeing him throwing in the high 80s and then leaving.
I wish I could throw in the high 80s and have to claim I have an arm problem. Vincent Velasquez yesterday, left the game. Now, last night, Zach Eflin was pulled from his game. If you miss Velasquez, let's just say they shut him down for a couple of weeks here, and you look through the Philly system, is Zach Eflin the guy that intrigues you the most to call up and take a look at the big league level?
I'm not totally familiar with him. I think the idea with anyone you call up, though, is you just got to make sure you don't lean too hard on him. It's very, very difficult for someone to come up from the minors. And I think he's probably okay. I think whoever is called up, though, Pete Mackinnon, just needs to be very careful about overuse or blowing these guys' confidence before they even have a chance to get acclimated to the big league.
Yeah, they got a lot of pitching talent in the minors. We'll see who gets the call. Eflin was pulled from the start last night. It seems like the last couple times we've talked, Craig Calcaterra is with us, the Ryan Howard stuff. But I really want to get your thoughts on Tommy Joseph and, ask you whether or not people think that he looks like a guy. When they made the trade for him, he was a catcher, and he was going to be their catcher when they traded Hunter Pence. They got Joseph back to be their catcher, and all those concussions, he seemed like a forgotten guy. But does he look like a guy that could be a long-term solution at first base? Because I don't know that people were looking at him as a legitimate major league piece the last year or so.
Yeah, I don't think they are either. I mean, his bat has definitely looked well in the majors this year, and anything's going to look great compared to Ryan Howard, but he's genuinely been doing good. But you look at his track record. I mean, he had 7 seasons in the minors. Overall, they're not fantastic offensive numbers, and for a lot of that, though, granted, he was catching. He was a guy that, you could carry some lower offense if the guy can catch, but he's, his on-base percentage in the minors was fairly low, just a tick over 300. The power was not fantastic. I think he only hit double-digit home runs a couple of times, and that was, several years ago. So, do you picture this guy as a first baseman, a corner piece in your lineup of the future? Anything's possible. He's only, 23, 24 years old, so it's possible that he could definitely be there at some point. But I don't think anyone has him pegged as a long-term offensive star. He's more like a placeholder.
Yeah, that was the thought, and he has hit pretty well when he came up, and we'll see. What do you think is ultimately Pete Mackinnon's decision? What do you think that will end up being here? He has kind of hinted that he's close to coming up with a solution at first base. Is it the smart thing, though, just to play Joseph at least 5 times a week? I mean, isn't that what this team should be doing at this point?
I certainly would be. I think that you play this guy, you see how long he can keep this up. If you think that he's somebody who's better than his minor league numbers suggested, hey, you keep him. If he's somebody that you think you can maybe flip for something else, then you flip him. But you only get that if you have him in there every day. My guess, and I don't have any inside information on this, but my guess is that there's a conversation going on between, say, Pete Mackinnon and the baseball field staff and the front office about, when's Ryan Howard getting released. because I think that's inevitable. He just doesn't have a place on this team, and it's on some level not fair to him, right? I mean, you bring him out here, he got thrown at by a fan, a bottle or something got thrown at him last week by a fan. He's struggling. He's really the last piece that connects back to the really good Phillies teams of a few years ago, and at some point you got to give him a chance to catch on somewhere else, knowing that no one is going to trade for him. So my guess is that Howard is going to get cut at some point this season, probably before the trade deadline, and it's going to be Joseph's job anyway.
I'm talking with Craig Calcaterra. You can listen to Craig on NBC Sports Radio, the 24/7 live sports talk network, which you can listen to at NBCSportsRadio.com. Download the NBC Sports Radio mobile app today. And Craig, the Cubs were in town this week, this past week here, basically. How good is this Cubs team? Are they far and away, to you, the best team in baseball? And do they, we've seen good teams in regular season, but do they have a playoff look about that roster?
Yeah, absolutely. If you look backwards at every good team, you go to the end of the season and you look at every good team record-wise after 162, you will note that teams that have stability in their starting rotation, that really only use a minimum number of pitchers all year in their starting rotation, obviously you need great performance from them, but the ones that have a reliable five that they stick with all year are always amazing teams. The Cubs have gotten every single one of their starts from the five guys in their opening day starting rotation, and they've all been fantastic. The worst one there, I think right now, has probably been Kyle Hendricks, who's probably got like a ERA around 3 or something, and he's been great too. When you have that kind of reliability, these guys going 7 innings every game, everything else flows from there. The bullpen has a few weaknesses, but they're minimized because of the rotation. The lineup right now has 4 legit all-stars. I know Addison Russell is currently leading at shortstop, but he's not an all-star. But between Rizzo, Zobrist, Chris Bryant, Dexter Fowler has been amazing this year. They've really got nothing from Jason Hayward, their big offensive acquisition in the offseason. He's a notorious slow starter. He's also had an injury. I would be shocked if he didn't have an amazing second half that gives them a boost. So, yeah, this definitely has the look of one of those teams that can win well over 100 games.
Craig, can you kind of give your take on what the Major League Baseball draft means? I mean, it seems like it is gaining more attention over the last couple of years. Nowhere near basketball and football, but for a team like Philadelphia who has the number 1 pick, how impactful and important is a night like tonight?
Major League Baseball hates it when people say this, but I'm going to say it because it's true. The draft is a crapshoot. It's a weighted crapshoot. But in baseball, no one, even after 150 years, has any kind of hard knowledge about what makes a good major league player. You can get the most talented guy, and you know the few that are going to make the bigs. But just go back and look every single year since 1966 when the draft started, and you'll see the top 10, top 20 guys. There are a bunch of no-names, and then there are a bunch of guys who didn't do as well as you thought they would do, and then guys who are huge stars that didn't rate anywhere. And if you have the first, odds are you're going to get a future major leaguer, but it's way less than football. It's way less than basketball. And then as far as that push we're talking about, it feels like professional wrestling. Major League Baseball is trying to make the draft happen. It's just not going over because people want to see stars. People want to see names. And baseball just doesn't work like that. The biggest names are going to get drafted and they're going to disappear for 3 years before they're up in the bigs. And at the time, they didn't even know who they were because they weren't on national TV all the time. So it's always a tough go. I think that the draft is more art than science. And there's a reason we don't have any Mel Kipers in baseball. No one really has a monopoly on wisdom with this stuff.
Right. It seems like, in baseball, as opposed to basketball and football, the football guy and the basketball guy will get team after team, shot after shot at that level. The baseball guy may never step on a major league diamond, even if he's the first or second overall pick. So it truly is. It's so hard to determine because it's the one sport where very rarely do you go from draft day right to the majors.
No, it just doesn't happen. It's rare when it does. And then the other thing is any one player on a baseball field, no matter how good he is, can only impact so much. If you draft an amazing shooting guard, he could have impact within a year. If you draft a good quarterback, he can carry a team far more than any one baseball player can. So the leverage isn't there, the talent isn't there, the amount of weight on any one guy is not that much. You bust with your first pick, you have 15 other ones, and they might pan out.
He's the lead baseball writer at NBCSports.com. Craig Calcaterra here on the Sports Bash talking baseball with us. Phillies with an off day, back in action tomorrow against the Washington Nationals. You can hear more from Craig over at NBC Sports Radio, the 24/7 live sports talk network, which you can listen to at NBCSportsRadio.com. Download the NBC Sports Radio mobile app for your phone today. Craig, always a pleasure, pal. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks for having me.